From Citizen TV, this is the Monday Report with Trevor Ombija.
That's absolutely right. Thank you so much for staying with Citizen TV. And yes, this is the Monday Report. Just a quick update. We were expecting to speak to Onesmus Kipchumba Murkomen, the CS for Interior and National Administration, on the police crisis, but we just received information a few moments ago that is still held up in emergency engagement and he might not make it to the show tonight. But thank you all for the feedback that you sent through. Hopefully he'll finish on time. If he doesn't, we'll update you as well that is still held up for now, all right? But first, our top stories tonight.
Giving in at last. Deputy Inspector General Eliud Lagat bows to public pressure and steps aside over the murder of Albert Ojwang. I was directed by OCS Talam and DIG Lagat to torture Ojwang. Mukwana's confession as OCS Talam is arraigned of Ojwang's death.
To begin this resetting and rebuilding process, we demanded the arrest of the DCI because he lied on oath under the IG, as well as Mr. Langat himself, and they be prosecuted.
Hold them to account. Former CJ Maraga calls for arrest of Police Inspector General Douglas Kanja and DCI boss Amin over the murder of Ojwang.
Wengi wameaga dunia jana, hata juzi, hata wiki jana, lakini alichagua kuchukua mzigo huo kama wake ili akaweze kusema pole kupitia kwa simu yangu.
A phone call and 2 million shillings. Ojwang's father says president reached out and donated 2 million shillings to him.
Thank you so much for tuning in. Our sign language interpreter tonight is Yola Nzales. A Deputy Inspector General of Police, Eliud Lagat, who has been adversely mentioned in the arrest and death of blogger Albert Ojwang, has bowed to pressure and stepped aside to pave way for investigations. His resignation comes following intense pressure from the public, the opposition, and the human rights bodies that demanded for his arrest and prosecution. Stephen Leto has more.
Few minutes after Interior Cabinet Secretary Kipchumba Murkomen issued a detailed statement on police reforms partly triggered by the death of blogger Albert Ojwang in police hands, DIG Eliud Lagat bowed to pressure and stepped aside to pave way for investigations. Lagat says his move was in good and conscious thought of his role and responsibilities, citing the ongoing investigations into Ojwang's death as the reasons for temporarily vacating office. Lagat in his statement termed Ojwang's death as unfortunate incident and will be out of office until the completion of the ongoing investigations. The move by Lagat became apparent when the Interior Cabinet Secretary earlier hinted to the possibility by saying the police DIG is well conversant with the law of investigations and necessary steps that needs to be taken by suspects and those adversely mentioned.
DIG Lagat is a seasoned police officer who understands what it takes to carry out matters of investigations and where or whether or not his conduct or act or position can affect that investigations.
In his statement, Lagat ends by noting, and I quote, "I undertake to provide any support that may be required of me during investigations of the unfortunate incident. I offer immense condolences to the family of Mr. Albert Ojwang for their great loss." End quote.
Lagat must go! Lagat must go!
Pressure has been mounting with human rights bodies, the Law Society of Kenya, sections of religious leaders and protesters who took onto the streets on Budget Day demanding for Lagat's resignation, arrest and prosecution.
The investigations, as I've already said earlier, are going on with IPOA. IPOA is doing its part in terms of investigations.
Inspector General of Police Douglas Kanja told senators last week that Ojwang was arrested after Lagat filed a formal complaint with the Directorate of Criminal Investigations, a move that has now placed him at the center of the probe. Stephen Leto, Citizen TV.
But even as probe ensues, little is known on the rise of DIG Lagat, who began his career as a mechanic before becoming a top police cop. Ayub Abdikadir looks at the profile of one of Kenya's top cops whose career now hangs in the balance in one of the country's high-profile murders.
Eliud Kipkoech Lagat, a career cop, began his spell with the National Police Service in 1998, joining the service after completing training at the Kenya Police College in Kiganjo. A career that saw him serve in different roles before becoming the Deputy Inspector General of Police, Kenya Police Service. Before the brutal murder of Albert Ojwang staining his career, Lagat served in various capacities, including Deputy Head of Crime Scene Support Unit, the Head of Investigation Bureau, and later as the Head of Bomb and Hazardous Material Unit. 2 years after joining the service, he became an Inspector of Police attached to the Bomb Disposal Unit, housed at the Criminal Investigations Department, now the Directorate of Criminal Investigations. Between 2001 and 2005, he was forensic investigator still attached to the DCI headquarters. However, in 2020, he was named the Deputy Director, DCI Reform Section. 2 years later, in 2022, he was named the Director Investigations Bureau, a position he held until April 2023, when he was named the Commandant of the General Service Unit, an elite unit within the National Police Service. Lagat rose to his current role in 2024, replacing Douglas Kanja after he was promoted as the Inspector General. Mandated to oversee the day-to-day administration and operations of the Kenya Police Service, overseeing coordination, supervision, training and internal oversight within the unit. He was among the candidates shortlisted to succeed George Kinoti after his sacking by President William Ruto over runaway extrajudicial killings and enforced disappearances of Kenyans. He holds a master's degree in armed conflict and peace studies from the University of Nairobi and a Bachelor of Technology in Automotive from University of Eastern Africa, Baraton, in Nandi County. Ayub Abdikadir, Citizen TV.
Now, Police Constable James Mukhwana, currently in custody over the killing of blogger Albert Ojwang, has broken his silence, revealing chilling details about what transpired on the night of June 7, 2025, while Ojwang was held at the Central Police Station. In a damning statement recorded before the Independent Policing Oversight Authority, Mukhwana has directly implicated OCS Samson Talam, claiming that he acted on instructions issued from the Deputy Inspector General Eliud Lagat. According to Mukhwana, he was ordered to discipline Ojwang once he was brought in. This is his second statement to IPOA, having recanted an earlier version in which he claims he and fellow officers conspired to conceal the truth. And as Ben Kurino reports, through his lawyers, the officer is seeking protection.
A blow-by-blow account exclusively in our possession now sheds a new light on what could be the events of the night of June 7th, 2025, the night blogger and teacher Albert Ojwang died while in custody at the Central Police Station. The damning statement, recorded by detained Police Constable James Mukhwana, directly implicates the officer commanding station OCS Samson Talam, alleging that he issued instructions to discipline Ojwang. Orders, Mukhwana claims, originated from Deputy Inspector General of Police Eliud Lagat. This comes despite OCS Talam having publicly distanced himself from the murder allegations. In his detailed statement to investigators from the Independent Policing Oversight Authority IPOA, Mukhwana narrates being summoned to the OCS's office during his shift. He was allegedly told, and I quote, "There is a directive from DIG Lagat. Do you know him? There are officers from the DCI headquarters bringing a suspect here at 8 p.m. Tell the inmates to discipline him a bit." When Mukhwana raised concerns about what could go wrong, he says he was warned against questioning orders as a junior officer and told bluntly that disobedience could cost him. Later that night at around 9 p.m., a black Subaru pulled up at the station. Inside was a man in handcuffs, later identified as Albert Ojwang. Mukhwana says he called OCS Talam, who confirmed that Ojwang was the suspect in question. Ojwang was booked into custody at around 9:20 p.m. and shortly after, The assault began inside the last cell opposite the toilet. Mukhwana states that 4 inmates, Collins Ireri, Jill Amiton, Brian Mwaniki and Eric Ndambuki, were instructed to carry out the beatings after they were given 2,000 shillings to buy alcohol. As the beatings escalated, Mukhwana claims he and another officer, Police Constable Kemani, rushed in to stop the torture. Ojwang was found bleeding, leaning against the wall. Mukhwana says he immediately asked the Deputy OCS Samuel Nganga to take Ojwang to hospital. It was around 10 p.m. when he left for home. The following day, on June 8th, he began receiving numerous calls from colleagues asking if he had heard what had happened to Ojwang. When he reached out to Nganga for clarity, he was advised to call the OCS. OCS Talam reportedly brushed off his concerns, telling him things were not bad and that they were safe. But by June 11th, Mukhwana had been summoned by IPOA to record a formal statement. He admits that in his initial testimony, he withheld the truth as part of a pact among the officers to cover up for one another. However, he later discovered he was being made a scapegoat by his colleagues. Haunted by guilt, Mukhwana says he returned to IPOA on June 12th and asked to record a second truthful statement. He was arrested and taken to Capitol Hill Police Station, where his second statement was taken. Mukhwana says Ojwang was not meant to be killed, but to be disciplined as per instruction of the OCS Talam. Through his lawyers, Mukhwana has now requested placement under witness protection, stating he is ready to tell the whole truth. Mukhwana's legal team says they won't be seeking his release on bail, citing concerns over his personal safety. The lawyers claim they have been trailed and intimidated by individuals believed to be police officers, and a formal complaint has been lodged at the Capitol Hill Police Station. Ben Kirui, Citizen TV, Nairobi.
Now, Central Police Station OCS Samson Talam will remain in custody until 18th of June 2025, when the court will rule on the state's request to detain him for 21 more days over the murder of blogger Albert Ojwang. At the same time, 4 civilians, including a technician accused of tampering with CCTV footage at the Central Police Station, will also remain in custody for 14 days to allow the prosecution to complete its investigation. Seth Olale followed the court proceedings.
Embattled Central Police Station OCS Samson Talam cut a calm figure as he stood in the dock facing serious accusations over his alleged role in the brutal murder of teacher and blogger Albert Ojwang. In a tense courtroom, the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions and IPOA urged Chief Magistrate Ben Mark to grant police 21 more days to hold Talam, accusing him of tampering with crucial evidence in the ongoing probe into Ojwang's death while in custody.
The respondent is the custodian of the station records and the surveillance system, that is the CCTV, that is under investigation.
But in a swift objection to the ODPP's and IPOA's request for 21 more days of custodial detention, OCS Talam's lawyer, Dansan Omari, argued that his client is not a flight risk and has no intention of interfering with witnesses. The defense also dismissed claims that the Central Police Station OCS was at the crime scene when the murder was carried out.
Do you have anything to show that is a danger to anybody of the public?
Nothing attached.
So it is an apprehension.
Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Chief Magistrate Ben Mark directed that OCS Talam remain in police custody until 2 p.m. on Wednesday, 18th June 2025, when the court will rule on the state's application to detain him for 21 more days to conclude investigations. Meanwhile, 4 other suspects, all civilians, will remain in custody for 14 days. Among them is a 23-year-old technician accused of disabling CCTV cameras at Central Police Station after allegedly being paid 3,000 shillings. The Kibra and Kahawa law courts granted the prosecution's request to hold the suspects, Jean Amitou, Collins Karani, Brian Mwaniki Njue, and the CCTV technician for 2 weeks in order to conclude investigations. As the prosecution and defense prepare for a legal showdown, both sides are already lining up potential witnesses in the case that is running concurrently in various courts here in the capital. Seth Olale, Citizen TV at the Milimani Law Courts.
Former Chief Justice David Maraga has called for the arrest and prosecution of Inspector General of Police Douglas Kanja, his deputy Eliud Lagat, and DCI Director Mohamed Amin for lying under oath about the circumstances under which blogger Albert Ojwang was killed while in police custody. Maraga, who at one time led a police reforms task force, has also threatened to institute private prosecution if the government does not take action against the three who he says bear the overall responsibility. Kamau Mwangi has the details.
Pressure continues to mount, with Kenyans and human rights activists now demanding that the country's police chiefs resign.
We have no problem. We want to drop this. Who is in charge?
Former Chief Justice David Maraga, who presented a petition seeking accountability at the police headquarters in Nairobi, is demanding that three police chiefs, namely the Inspector General of Police Douglas Kanja, his former deputy Eliud Lagat, and DCI boss Mohamed Amin, be arrested, as they bore the ultimate responsibility in ensuring Ojwang's safety.
We demanded the arrest of the DCI because he lied on oath under the IG, as well as Mr. Langat himself. And they be prosecuted, and those, of course, who are associated with the murder of Ojwang.
While laying blame for the increased cases of police brutality right at President William Ruto's doorstep, Maraga says if nothing is done in the next 9 days to bring the three to book, Kenyans should come out in their numbers and demand the same.
We support the efforts of the other Kenyans who have already petitioned for private prosecution. And if no action is taken, we will join them and come up even with fresh charges against them.
The man who led the police reforms task force believes time has come to push the Kenya Kwanza administration to implement those reforms and better the National Police Service that has been adversely mentioned in having a hand at abductions, maiming and wrongful detention of government critics.
The spirit that was set by the agencies last year, who courageously came out and demanded their rights, is a spirit we all embrace, and we want to call upon all Kenyans to join the young people and demand for this right. Without doing that, we are going to be taken for granted for years, and our country is going down the drain.
Kamau Mwangi, Citizen TV.
Now, fresh details are emerging about a conversation between President William Ruto and Meshach Ojwang, father to slain blogger and teacher Albert Ojwang. Meshach revealed that the head of state reached out to him to offer his condolences, donating 2 million shillings to support the grieving family. Marian Nyambura has the details.
A day after the family of Albert Ojwang completed their cultural ceremony, Tero Yuak, in honor of Albert, the family has come out to share how President William Ruto's phone call was received at this time of grieving.
Namshukuru Rais kwa kuchukua kijana wangu Albert Omondi kama kijana wake na kuhisi kuona kitu, sababu wengi wameaga dunia jana, hata juzi, hata wiki jana, lakini alichagua kuchukua mzigo huo kama wake ili akaweze kusema pole kupitia kwa simu yangu. Mimi namshukuru kwa ajili ya hiyo.
Besides the donation of 2 million shillings, President William Ruto assured Ojwang's father that the quest for justice will continue.
Kutoka hapa na kuendelea mbele, ni Mungu tu tunategemea atusaidie. Ni Mungu tu tunamtegemea. Kwa mengine mengi ambayo yako, kama si Mungu hatutaweza. Kwa hivyo nimekuja kwa sababu ya kuleta ujumbe wa kifo.
Meanwhile, the family continues to receive support from well-wishers. Homa Bay County government has begun constructing a 2-bedroom house for the bereaved family.
We are very sad with the family and as a people. And we join Kenyans in this sadness. And in calling for justice for Albert. Quick justice, not justice by word, but justice by action for Albert Ojwang.
Albert, the only son of Meshach Ojwang, died on June 7th, hours after his arrest at their home in Homa Bay County. Marian Nyambura, Citizen TV.
Interior Cabinet Secretary Kipchumba Murkomen has announced several measures aimed at restoring public trust in the police. Among the changes is the installation of more than 1,200 CCTVs across police stations nationwide within 2 years. This move comes after widespread outrage over the death of Albert Ojwang while in custody. Here's Ode Francis with the full story.
The death of 31-year-old teacher and activist Albert Ojwang in police custody at Central Police Station has sparked public outrage and renewed calls for justice. Disturbing discrepancies have emerged in police accounts of the incident, the IPOA revealing that critical CCTV footage is missing from the station where Ojwang was held and reportedly died. The incident has prompted a strong response from Interior CS Kipchumba Murkomen.
Incidents such as bodies being dumped in Yala River, the case of Indian nationals killed in a container at police station, cases of abductions, incarcerations, detention without trial, and recently the death of Mr. Albert Ojwang while in the hands of police, among others, must be punished by law, and those involved will soon be held accountable.
Murkomen has now announced sweeping reforms in the National Police Service. The changes include mandatory installation of CCTV in all 1,200 plus police stations within 2 years. Police commanders will be required to report any system failure within 1 hour. Occurrence books will be fully digitized. Officers will undergo annual training to enhance professionalism, and community policing will be expanded to strengthen trust between police and the public.
We shall be making proposals to Parliament to enact laws that criminalize tampering with CCTV cameras. The surveillance system shall be in the custody of the officer commanding station.
Murkomen also revealed that OCS officers and others in command will now be required to undergo annual training focused on constitutional standards and service delivery. Further, police operations will undergo regular independent audits to assess effectiveness and identify areas of improvement. The murder of Albert Ojwang comes 12 years after another notorious case where an OCS was found guilty of torturing Martin Koome to death in a police cell and was sentenced to hang. The latest reforms comes amid rising concerns over human rights violations and growing calls for accountability.
We shall roll out a digital reporting system. We shall make the respective budgetary adjustments to prioritize these reforms among other modernization strategies.
The big question now, will these reforms deliver real change on the ground? For now, eyes are on government and police to follow through. Ode Francis, Citizen TV, Nairobi.
All right, let's take a quick break on Monday Report. When we come back, there's still a lot coming up. We were expecting to host the CS for Interior, but he sent in a regret message saying that he's still held up in an emergency meeting. But we'll sample some of your feedback coming through. A lot of feedback was sent through. We'll sample some of them in just a bit. Thank you for staying with the Monday Report. Now, more than 700 healthcare facilities have been shut down in 5 counties for failing to meet basic standards. 301 other facilities have been downgraded following a nationwide inspection by the Kenya Medical Practitioners and Dentists Council. The affected facilities were found to be either unregistered, unlicensed, or operating below the required standards. As Emily Chebet now reports, Health Cabinet Secretary Adan Duale says that the crackdown is ongoing as the government moves to root out quack medics and rogue clinics preying on unsuspecting Kenyans.
The inspection conducted in Nairobi, Mandera, Wajir, Kisii and Nyamira established that hundreds of clinics in those major towns were operating without proper approvals, putting the lives of vulnerable Kenyans at risk. These facilities mostly found in informal settlements where low-income families are desperate for affordable health care. Subsequently, 728 healthcare facilities have been shut down over the last 2 months, and another 301 have been downgraded after failing to meet critical infrastructure and operational requirements. Out of 1,017 facilities inspected in Nairobi, 394 were closed down and 23 downgraded. In Kisii, 291 facilities were inspected, 120 closed, and 23 downgraded. The officers from KMPDC inspected 269 facilities in Mandera and closed 58 facilities and downgraded 60. In the county of Wajir, 239 facilities were inspected, 77 have been closed, while 114 downgraded. In Nyamira County, 167 facilities were inspected, 79 closed, and 41 downgraded.
And we will go to all counties and all constituents and all wards. And I really want to ask the Kenyan people to report two things. One, if they see a facility that don't qualify to be called a health facility, report those fake facilities, report those quack doctors and healthcare workers who are treating our patients and who are risking their lives.
According to the documents from KMPDC, many of these facilities were found to be staffed by unqualified personnel, leaving patients exposed to serious health risks. According to CS Duale, some rogue medics have been running the facilities, minting millions from the defunct NHIF. Emily Chebet, Citizen TV.
No public school in Kenya is allowed to charge any levies without authorization from the Ministry of Education. The High Court has declared that it is unlawful for public schools to impose unauthorized levies on parents. The judgment comes at a time when parents have been questioning accountability in the management of public education funds, with many public schools accused of imposing illegal financial demands.
Although basic education in Kenya is free under the Constitution, parents and students are still being exploited by heads of public schools through illegal levies. These include charges for admission, lockers, stationery, laboratory use, examinations, and extracurricular activities. In many cases, students are sent home for failing to pay these unlawful fees. The High Court has ruled against St. George's Girls Secondary School for charging parents unauthorized levies. In his judgment, Justice Lawrence Mugambi said no public school, even with backing from parents' associations, can impose fees without approval from the Education Cabinet Secretary. This after the school was found to have demanded payments for dormitory construction, infrastructure, remedial classes, and a budget deficit fund without ministry clearance. The High Court declined the petitioner's request for a refund of levies paid by parents, instead directing the Ministry of Education to conduct a full audit of how the funds were used and submit a report within 3 months. The judge also faulted the ministry for ignoring letters from the petitioner, raising concerns over the charges. The petitioner went to court after the school told him to pay an extra 25,000 shillings upon admission of his daughter in the school in 2023 for the completion of a dormitory, whereas he had cleared all the school fees. The petitioner, whose identity was concealed, was also required to pay 3,000 shillings as remedial fees, although it was not compulsory. While the court upheld the school's policy requiring parents to account for lost textbooks, it ruled that it was unreasonable to demand cash for lost books and that parents must be allowed to replace the books with their equivalent ones. Lillian Muli, Citizen TV.
Now, 4 police officers charged in the Baby Pendo murder case have been freed on bail. Each of the 4 officers were granted a 1 million shillings bail. Each of the officers is also to provide 2 sureties of 500,000 shillings. The accused were also ordered not to interfere with witnesses or victims or even tamper with evidence or visit the crime scene. They have also been barred from leaving the court's jurisdiction and directed to attend all the court sessions. The officers are accused of the murder of baby Samantha Pendo, who was fatally hit in 2017 as police were deployed to quell violence linked to post-election protests in the western city of Kisumu. The case will now be mentioned on July 2nd. Meanwhile, tension remains high at Woodley Estate as residents under the Old Estate Council Association protest against the ongoing evictions, which they say are illegal and in contempt of the court. The residents claim that homeowners with valid title deeds and court orders have been forcefully ejected by goons hired by the county government. They say that the evictions continue despite court injunctions, with the claims that homes are now being resold by the county government. The residents have called on Nairobi Senator Edwin Sifuna and the national government to intervene urgently.
Mambo ambayo nimeona yakifanyika kwa macho yangu yalinitisha, manake mimi nilipanga safari ya kwenda kuona rafiki yangu Katole ambaye alikuwa town clerk wa Nairobi. So iliponishangaza ni wakati nikaa hapo sijamaliza dakika mbili ni gari kutoka nyuma V8. Sijajua yani sikujua imejuaje mimi nimefika hapo kwa sababu nilikuja na mtu wa nduthi. Hiyo gari kusema ukweli ilipokuja mtu alishuka ndani, jamaa mnono kabisa, akaniambia nikupata hapa nitakupika risasi, na akaingia ndani. Ukweli nilifanya kutoroka na huyo mtu wa pikipiki.
You know, now spotlights Governor Sakaja's administration for orchestrating violent evictions and blatant regard for court orders. In Woodley Estate, legitimate homeowners protected by title deeds and court orders were forcibly ejected by the so-called new owners after Sakaja's administration illegally revoked their ownership.
Now, the High Court in Isiolo has halted the impeachment of Governor Abdi Guyo pending hearing and determination of a case he filed. Justice Heston Nyaga barred members of the County Assembly from admitting, processing, debating, or even considering the impeachment motion tabled before the Assembly on June 10th. The MCAs were set to debate the impeachment motion on Tuesday. The judge also directed the governor is furnished with a copy of the notice of motion for impeachment, together with all the supporting documents, within 48 hours of service of the order. The respondents have 7 days to file their responses. All right, on that note, let's take another quick break. Here on Monday Report, we're back with much more in just a bit, so don't go too far. Time now for some business news, and the National Social Security Fund is moving to reassure members of the safety of their retirement savings following the release of a damning audit by the Auditor General. The report flagged up to 16 billion shillings in potential losses linked to underperforming investments and internal weaknesses, even as NSSF's top management insists there's been no loss of public funds. Dennis Otieno reports on the growing scrutiny and the fund's new investment direction in national infrastructure.
The Auditor General's review of the National Social Security Fund, released early this month, paints a troubling picture, one showing a possible 16 billion shilling exposure from poor investments, unremitted contributions and stalled projects. But speaking during the opening of the International Social Security Association conference in Nairobi, NSSF Managing Trustee David Koros says no money has been lost.
If you read the auditor's report, and for the first time ever, NSSF got an unqualified audit report. Unqualified audit report. That's the most important message. The second issue, the figure they are quoting is not actually what was lost. It is misinterpretation. It is money stuck in projects. We have legacy issues, which we are dealing with. But most importantly, I want to assure the general public that their money is safe.
The fund is also defending its planned investment in the Rironi Mau Summit Toll Road Consortium, saying it is a well-vetted revenue-generating venture that aligns with its strategy to diversify and grow pension returns.
Actually, infrastructure investment the world over is done by pension schemes. I can name you almost 20 roads, infrastructure projects done in Africa by social security institutions.
We've been talking about building Likoni Bridge, looking for billions of money, trying to borrow from the World Bank, trying to borrow from ADB, trying to borrow from somebody, from the Chinese, trying to borrow. But maybe National Social Security Fund, we can partner in a way that as you grow and expand with a very good vision, we don't have to borrow money to build the Nyali Bridge. We can build it with our own Kenyan money.
But uncertainty looms as some quarters are questioning whether such large-scale infrastructure deals are appropriate for a pension fund already under audit scrutiny.
One investment can go bad, but that doesn't mean that the portfolio was wrong. Even you, when you make decisions, you make them for tomorrow. That's why there's this whole thing called diversification.
For now, NSSF is racing to reassure its contributors with a renewed push to modernize its systems, recover any stalled assets, and regularly disclose how members' savings are being managed. With 16 billion shillings in question and billions more poised for investment, the spotlight is firmly on NSSF's next move and whether it can truly balance growth with safety in managing the country's retirement lifeline. Dennis Otieno, Citizen TV, Nairobi.
Now, food wastage continues to be one of the biggest contributors to food insecurity in Kenya, with over 30% of every farm produce estimated to go to waste. This, coupled with processed condiments in the Kenyan market, is the motivation behind Linda Korir's NutriBlends Farm Fresh, a venture she founded to create healthier and more sustainable food options for Kenyan consumers. Edward Chair tells us how NutriBlends makes the various condiments by working with the local farmers.
At the Kenya Industrial Research and Development Institute, KIRDI, in Nairobi's South Sea, Linda Korir and her team are up and running. This is her brainchild, NutriBlends Farm Fresh, which she founded to add value to food products, making different condiments for local consumption.
I experienced firsthand food loss from farming I started, and I saw how farmers are affected because of farming, and maybe there's an excess of product. So that's how we started NutriBlends, to be able to curb food loss and food waste. So we wanted to give people good quality products that is good for the whole family.
Using fresh, high-quality raw materials obtained from local small-scale farmers, NutriBlends manufactures different kinds of sauces. The process includes cleaning, disinfecting, blanching, peeling, blending, and boiling the different ingredients for 2 to 3 hours.
We have tomato and herb ketchup. We have a sweet and spicy barbecue and a pineapple barbecue sauce. We have a habanero with pineapple chili sauce, sweet chili sauce, and smoked chili sauce. Now we're introducing pickles, pineapple and ginger jam, and granolas.
We have partnered with a number of small-scale farmers. When we bring them to the factory, we start with the peel of the pineapple. We blend it. We add other ingredients like ginger and garlic. We blend them together and then we boil. After boiling and add the other secret ingredients, there is element of putty, preservative, and then packaging.
Linda says she targets the general public with her products, and what makes them stand out is sticking to their policy of using natural ingredients and helping local farmers avoid food loss.
If I'm saying a tomato and herb ketchup, it's literally tomatoes. We don't use any fillers in them. We don't use any chemicals or colors or such additives. So our target clients are people who appreciate the naturalness of our products. We're having our products ranging between 280 to 420.
She sells the NutriBlends products online and attends exhibitions to meet more customers and learn how to be better.
Organic farmers markets, exhibitions at KCC, churches. So that's what we do to get people to know us. And also we have a very active Instagram page, so we normally post a lot, and we get clients from that angle as well. We've also gotten support by incubation companies like FAO and KCIC and KIRDI, who've been able to push us. So I think we are positioning ourselves to be very good for investment, 1, and 2, scalability.
Linda looks forward to scaling NutriBlends operations and being able to export her products to other countries in the coming future.
I would want it to be a household brand. Export market is good market. So we're seeing ourselves being around for a very long time, targeting both at least 15 million Kenyans and also getting into the export market.
Edward Chwea, Made in Kenya, Citizen TV.